Today's episode is brought to you by Playoffs. Playoffs.
It's high noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I am your host, Ab Evans, and with me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Oh, not too much. Just hanging out, avoiding heat as much as humanly
Oh
possible.
my god. Okay, so I tweeted out about this, about how I'm horribly sunburned, and the YouTube viewers are going to be able to see that that is just as painful as it can be. I made the mistake of going outside.
Yeah, but you got a little bit of exercise, so that's good. You should give yourself a pat on the back. For
No,
getting
I'm
out
not
and
giving
doing
myself a
Come on.
pat on the back. I'm not. If it were appropriate, and I wasn't possibly going to get Twitch banned. I wasn't even going to wear a shirt today. But I have to charge $10.99 an hour for that. I mean, but let's just talk about
Head
anything
over to
else.
patreon.com/podcast.
No, that's a different one, and it's not at Patreon. It's at a different site that I'm not going to advertise here. Man, I did not want to go down that. Nope, not even going to finish that sentence. Let's just move on and talk about what's been going on in the High Noon Productions world. Blackwatch Report was had a big week this week. They had their normal episode, and they also had Barry Lee, who is notably a member of Evolved PR, which is the talent agency run by Ryan Morrison, who has been on the High Noon hot seat. So they talked a lot about two-way contracts. I was talking with Thorne. I haven't gotten a chance to listen to the episode yet, but I was talking with Thorne about how Barry mentioned, and by the way, Barry is basically the person that is the agent for a lot of the Korean players, like Jonak, and Jonak was the one that stuck out to me, obviously. I think there's a couple other, but I don't want to misquote. I know for a fact Jonak, but there's a bunch of other top Korean pros that he's managing as well. So definitely check that one out. And he was talking about a little bit of a distinction between a salary cap and a team cap that I thought was very interesting, because when apparently when people talk about salary caps, what they actually mean is a team cap. So a salary cap is more like on the player level, where like there's not a salary cap in Overwatch League in the sense that a player can only make a certain amount of money. There may or may not be a team cap in that you can only have a certain amount of salary space on your team. So definitely take a listen to that. They definitely talk more about that in that episode, as well as two-way player contracts. There's some light shed on that as well, and some other things with the path to pro. So definitely an interesting one to listen to, as well as the normal Blackwatch Report episode as well. Foul play, as well as, well, foul play is in the off season right now. I mean, nothing is changing with fantasy when there's no game to play. But as soon as we start, I mean, once the rumor and trade season starts,
Right.
we'll be talking much more about the fantasy side as well. So once we have enough content and actual stuff to talk about for the fantasy side, we'll be firing foul play back up for sure. Or if we get if we get something, a breakthrough with the stats, or maybe another platform or something,
There'll be
keep
one or
updated.
two like look back episodes as
Yeah.
well. You kind of got to do that to be ready for next year's drafts.
Yeah, exactly. Around the Payload is in its official, or maybe unofficial, I don't know, I guess it's official if I say it right, official summer break right now, but is coming back very soon. Very likely next week we'll be having an ATP coming back. It's just been like, everyone was like, you know what, Overwatch, we're taking a break here for a couple of weeks. Talk to me then. We've ate, slept, and drank Overwatch for the past 100 years. I just need a little bit of a break. So I think that was just across the board. Everyone wanted a little bit of a break, but I'm sure a lot of people are feeling the same thing that I am, where it's like, I miss the hustle and bustle. Like,
Playoffs are here. We got to get back into
yeah,
it. Let's
exactly,
go.
exactly. But a much needed break, and I'm just gonna call it a summer vacation because that's the thing that people do, and there's a Steam sale and stuff like that. I checked earlier today, and I'm gonna double check right now, but I believe All Things Considered also did not have a new episode. No, it's not looking like a new episode there. So a little bit of a light week today, except for Blackwatch Report keeping the ship afloat there. But this week and next week and the following weeks are going to be real big because, well, if for no other reason that we're going to grand finals.
Yes, sir.
We are going to the Super Bowl. We've already looked into acquiring some upgraded technology to be able to do some better streaming for interviews and coverage and stuff. So we're going to try to do as much as we can. Both
we don't know what our capabilities will be, but
we don't know what our
anything
capabilities or permissions are.
Right.
This is one of the places where I don't really want to break the rules if I don't have to.
Right.
Because I'd rather not get kicked out of this.
You break the rules to get in backstage, you know.
Right. We're way past that.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for the invite.
You break the rules once you're there. You know?
Yeah. We for the record, we didn't break any rules to get the invites. Yeah, so we'll definitely be doing that. Yeah, I want to. I've been meaning to put out a tweet about this, and I just keep forgetting. I keep remembering, and then I don't do it. Tweet at us, or either at High Noon Podcast, or tweet at us individually. Let us know if you're going to be there at Grand Finals. And also, you can go to the Discord channel. We do have a text channel there. A couple people have talked about a meetup or something at Grand Final, so we'll definitely be doing that. I'm actually going to be there for my plan. I'm going to be there for a couple of days beforehand too. So if we've got some plans, let's do. If you're going to be there, let us know so we can set something up. I think that's all the housekeeping stuff we've got here. But let's move on without further ado to
Overwatch Today, Meme of the Week.
We're finally back with the Meme of the Week. The Overwatch community's been slacking lately with memes, so we've been taking a little bit of a break here. But we're back and ready for some bloody action. Death, do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so there was, I think it was either a parody account or a parody tweet. I don't know. I just saw somebody link it to me. That is basically a roster announcement for the UK World Cup team. The roster is as follows. You'll pick up on the. I wanted to combine theme and meme together, but fun fact, you can't really do that with the word meme and I don't know. It doesn't really work.
Sounds
but
like a Dr.
anyways,
Seuss word.
The joke roster here is at Tank. We've got Stylosa's dad, Danny Dyer, and Brian Blessed. At DPS, we have Susan Boyle, David Beckham, Big Shaq, Mr. Bean, and at the support lineup, we have Simon Pegg, Emma Watson, Doctor Who, and the Go Compare guy. And the reason I thought this was particularly funny is because I have no idea who any of these people are. I mean, I've got Mr. Bean covered, and I've got Emma Watson covered.
Yeah, Harry Potter.
I'm aware that Doctor Who is a TV show.
Yep.
The word TARDIS is something involved with that show, I believe.
Yep.
That's as far as I go there. But, I mean, Stylosa is just a phenomenal choice at Tank.
I mean, come on.
Stylosa's dad is probably a good guy. Mr. Bean is a perfect DPS category, but I'm taking issue with this list straight away. Yeah. Because there's no James Bond at the DPS. Leave it to the UK.
How do you not have James Bond?
It doesn't make any
sense.
It's
just dumb.
It's the only thing. But yeah, it was just a funny, goofy little thing here that a couple of the UK people in our Discord thought was funny. We told them we'd give them the Meme of the Week spot for, I don't know. They can make up their own jokes about it since I don't have any idea.
Wait a second. You don't know who David Beckham is?
Should I know who David Beckham is?
Yes.
I got nothing.
He's married to a Spice Girl. That's all I know.
Well, I mean, everybody's got to have accomplishments in their life, so that's more than I've got. got this show.
So here's the question: who would be on the fake Team USA roster?
Oh man, on the spot, there's like two. I can't even begin.
Mr. T.
And honestly, I
That's
would have
it.
had to have given this thought because I wouldn't want to give like a bad meme
right when I
roster.
heard this, I knew it was going to happen, and I wanted it on the spot. I didn't want any thought put into it. Yeah,
Giving
Mr.
a bad
T.
meme roster would be like a completely British thing to do. So I don't.
Okay,
I
so
don't know.
hold on. We'll just do a couple for each. So at tank, you have
All right.
Mr. T. Who's your tank on for Team USA?
Terry Crews.
Terry Crews. Okay, we've got old school and we got new school. Okay, at we'll do DPS last. At support, who are you picking for support?
Turk from Scrubs.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. I'm picking. I think, man. I think. Maybe maybe Barney from How I Met Your Mother. Just throw him in there.
He seems more like a DPS
He
player to me.
played, but here's the thing: Neil Patrick Harris played a doctor on TV. So,
Ted would have been better because Ted was the wingman, and the wingman should be.
but Ted is the worst and would never accomplish anything. He'd be like, "I just want to play Zarya." Shut the hell up, Ted. You're just Ross from Friends. I did it. I went there. Okay, so for DPS, who do you got?
I'll go with Jason Bourne because they should have gone with James Bond, and since they didn't, they can't beat Jason Bourne.
I mean, easiest Hulk Hogan of my life, but
that's fair. That's
yeah.
fair.
I mean, really, any wrestling personality would be great. I mean, personally, I'd like the Undertaker, but Pine is Korean, so I can't do that.
That's true. That's true.
And also, the whole USA thing. But yeah, Hulkamania. I'm just saying that roster would crush the fake UK roster, which, by the way, is better than what might be the real UK roster. I think Stylosa's dad is already better than most of the actual UK roster.
Shots fired.
But yeah, that's gonna lead us right into our next segment.
It's news.
Of course, news. Yeah, so World Cup rosters are quickly coming in. We've already got some leaks or fakes. I don't know what it is. I don't even think it's a leak. I'm pretty sure it was just a fake. We were playing Realm Royale, and boy, oh boy, did we... I think it was Kyle Wynn from Blackwatch Report was talking about how the Korean roster was out, and he was just dropping bombs. I'm like, oh my god, this team's unbeatable. It was like NYXL plus Carpe plus Fissure plus Fleta. It's like, I don't even want to think about.
Yeah, I mean,
that
it was like Nixel plus the 6 best Korean players
that
from Owl
that aren't on New
thrown
York.
into
Yeah.
it. But apparently that was like a joke roster, and I'm like, what is the joke? That you like made a
That
really
you wanna
good
win?
roster of Korean players? It's like, I don't understand what this joke is, but nonetheless, somebody made it. I don't know. But it fooled us in Discord, so we just wanted to talk about it. I guess by the time you're listening to this, in all likelihood, tomorrow we should have the World Cup for South Korea. The actual roster should be released. We're getting the United States roster on the 4th of July because that's just, easy. Canada should have been out yesterday, but they had somebody couldn't make it to scrims that was in the conversation for one of the spots, so they're a little delayed. I think we've seen...
Isn't today Canada Day, or was it yesterday? One of the days is Canada Day.
I don't know, but I saw a tweet from Jane basically saying we'd rather take our time, get the decision right, and make the announcement late than hurry the decision and potentially miss out on a player that we would want to have or something like that. So makes complete sense. And but yeah, there was Australia, I think, was announced. There's been a couple countries already announced, including the UK roster. We will be going into full coverage of the World Cup once the Overwatch League has completed. So we'll save the roster discussions and everything like that for once those come up. And I mean, basically when Overwatch League ends, the scope of the show shrinks down to World Cup and off-season stuff. So we want to make sure we save these conversations for when we need them.
Yeah, the spoiler for UK. I think UK is not done. It's just they're down. You can only bring 7, and they've narrowed it down to 12. I think so. They got to trim off a couple.
Everybody narrows down to 12, and then when you go to the qualifier, and then when you would go to BlizzCon, I think you pick 7 to actually
Oh, man, that would suck to be person 8 through 12. God, that would be awful. Man,
all the work, none of the trips.
Yeah, man, that's just got to be the biggest slap in the face of all time. But I don't know. Maybe they get something.
Better than not being on the final 12, I guess.
Yeah, it almost
only
certainly,
marginally.
almost certainly better. But yeah, the spoiler alert for UK is that they do not look great.
Not to us. I mean, they look
Yeah.
honestly roughly like we thought they would, and they kind of like surprised us last year at the World Cup. And
Yeah.
but I just it's there's we'll get into it, but there's glaring weaknesses on the team in my opinion. I'm not sure they could have found better options or not.
We
Maybe
also have
one, but-
OWL bias as well. There's not very
Right.
many OWL players on there.
yeah. So, but
Yeah, we'll definitely
we'll see. We'll get into it soon.
We'll be talking a lot more about that once OWL is over. And speaking of things that we will certainly be, well, almost certainly be talking a lot more about in the future, is a little furry guy, and I'm not talking about Fraggy or the Snillo pillow. We're of course talking about official name Wrecking Ball, but what everyone in the world calls him right now, Hammond. That is the little hamster character inside of a mech that was revealed and put onto PTR just a couple of days ago. He is a DPS. Or not a DPS. He's a tank hero. I mean, you know what Hammond is, right? Like you saw it. And I just like to say, from High Noon Podcast, we are very upset that Hammond is not a jockey chimpanzee healer, like we called him being months and months ago. So I'm very upset that that's not the case. But we
assumed that they put Brigitte out because they weren't done making the jockey healer work. Like we thought that's why it wasn't Hammond, and that was the delay. We were clearly lied to. It's a blow. I'm not, there's no other way to put it. It's definitely a blow.
Very sad.
I'm considering just shutting down the show and not playing the game anymore as a result. No, that's not true. Okay. Honestly, though, Hammond looks great. Like he looks like a really fun, really, really interesting hero. I know we both messed around with him a little bit on the PTR. He is very, very difficult to use. And so I love high skill cap heroes. I think really min-maxing with Hammond is going to be a lot of fun. He's going to kind of bring an element that I don't think has really existed to Overwatch before, and that's the concept of like a rollout. You spawn from the same spot on each map, every time, right? The exact same spot. And with the way his movement works, there's going to be ways to travel as efficiently as possible through the map, make it back to your team and to the point or to the fight as fast, faster than other ways, or traditionally just rolling along through the streets. You're going to want to Spider-Man your way through a little bit. And so there's going to be a lot of really interesting things that come along with Hammond here. I'm really, really excited about him as a hero. He's a really cool concept. It's really silly that he's got a different name other than Hammond when he's very clearly Hammond.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, that's literally like my only complaint. I don't think he looks overpowered. I don't think he looks meta defining. I don't know. I think he gives a little bit of a help or some options to the dive strategy, which I think are definitely being needed now, especially with Brigitte doing so much work and the new Hanzo rebuild that's on live and going to be in the playoffs. Really did a number on dive. So now they need to give them something back, right? So we're going to see some possible like triple tank dive strategies, things like that. I think will be really viable with Hammond. There seems to be counters out there for him. Everything I've seen so far is really positive. I think he's a really great hero, a really well-designed hero. Very excited to see what the pros do. Like, I just want to see Spree play him. I don't know if he streamed it or not, but I just want to see Spree play him.
Yeah.
It's in his wheelhouse. I think it's going to be a really good hero for him.
I'm sure that Libero also probably already, top 5.
Well, it's an Overwatch hero, so yeah, he's top 5 at it. That's fine.
The only argument I've heard for having his official in-game name be Wrecking Ball is that on the select screen it puts him next to Winston, like alphabetically. So I guess that kind of, because they're like, I don't know, lab brothers or something. I don't know. That I saw it on Reddit. It's the only thing that makes even a little bit of sense. Just call him
Jeff
Hammond.
Kaplan's just a really big Miley Cyrus fan and wanted to be able to use her song in the game a little bit, or in some content.
Maybe, but man, like you were saying with rollouts, like it's a much bigger thing in Team Fortress 2 where like getting to a point first or as fast as possible is a huge advantage, and the heroes or characters, I don't know what they're actually called in Team Fortress 2, but the they don't have movement abilities, so like there's certain characters that can either do a double jump, which I guess is kind of a movement ability, or rocket jumps, but their movement is drastically changed from their normal movement. So doing different things is going to get you somewhere faster. That's how Hammond feels, and much more so than any other hero. It's like with Lucio, it's like, okay, you realize that you can just get anywhere as fast as you can, and like it doesn't really matter. And also like even if you like on attack, if you get to a point faster, it doesn't matter because the defensive team's already there, and like the defensive team gets a time advantage. So that's like the rollouts never really matter that much for that. But I could definitely see Hammond doing some crazy things. And man, he can get in some weird spots. Like when I was testing him, I was playing him on King's Row, and you can get underneath, like, you know, the stairway to Blevins, the little trap on third point.
I refuse to call it that, but for the sake of the show, I'll acknowledge that I know what you're referring to. Yes,
we always, whenever I would stream, I would always call it that because I would fall down. Like when I first started playing, I would fall down that so much. Like it was really bad how much I would fall down that. But you can get underneath it with Hammond and swing around, and like I think it's possible for you to like go down one end, and like if you Spider-Man the correct way, you can swing yourself back up.
There's a clip of a guy backcapping, because he looks like he's just dying at the end of a team fight, but he swings up, goes on the point, and caps it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's gonna be
a lot of really
awesome.
cool stuff with him.
I found he seemed. Granted, I was playing in a match that was 6 Hammonds versus 6 Hammonds, but man, he seems like he moves really fast when he's swinging around in the air, and man, he is not easy to hit. It's like almost seems like at a speed that is not meant for Overwatch is what it felt like. It's like, this is just too fast. Like nothing moves this fast, and it seems like it almost is like he's moving so fast that he's like hacking, that it's like, it doesn't seem like my guns are meant to hit him. And man, everything about him just seems really interesting and very unique. So that's always a good thing with a new hero for Overwatch. So really looking forward to seeing the pros play him. I'm wondering when he's going to come to live. Maybe when are we going to get to see him in Contenders or Path to Pro? I'd like to see him.
Certainly by the World Cup time, though, we'll definitely be factored in. So that'll be a lot of fun.
World Cup might be Hammond's, might just be Hammond's debut into the competitive scene.
Could be. It'll all depend on how Contenders handles it.
Yeah. That's true. But let us know what you think about Hammond, either on Discord, discord.me/HighNoonPodcast, or in the comments below on the video. But let's move on to the meat and potatoes of this episode.
Oh, let's break it. Yeah!
This is what we came here for. This is the deep dive that we've been promising. We're going to go over the first match of this Overwatch League Season 1 playoff season, and that is the deep dive of the Philadelphia Fusion versus the Boston Uprising. So a couple of questions before we even go in. We've got map stats. We've got role. We've got position battles. I'm blanking here. We've got everything, and we've. There's a lot of questions that we have that I don't think we've gotten answered by the time of this recording, so we're just going to kind of leave it open, and maybe we'll get a comment somewhere, and we can put out a tweet addenduming, I don't know what the word is, making an addendum to the episode. But we're going to, like, there's a new meta, really, and there's going to be an even newer meta that has not been seen in Overwatch League, because we have confirmed got new Hanzo.
Yeah, so it's not going to be as big of a jump as stage 3 into stage 4 was. That was obviously a huge paradigm shift for the teams to try to cope with. This is going to be more like what you've been seeing, right? And what you could play right now in comp if you were to go, press play, and that won't that won't be true by the time they actually start playing, because the new Symmetra will be live on the the live servers by the time this kicks off, but won't take place or have any part in the Overwatch League playoffs. But Yeah, so we're going into the meta now where the Hanzo's reworked, so Scattershot is officially gone. It's being replaced by Storm Arrow. His projectile speed will be much, much faster, and if you've been playing on ladder recently, you know that's going to mean there will be a lot more Hanzo in the meta. Now, when you kind of look at the level 2 of that and what does more Hanzo in the meta mean, I think when you couple that with the change in map pool, that's going to mean we're going to see a lot less Diva and Winston. I'm sure it won't disappear entirely, but we're going to see a good amount more of the Orisa Roadhog compositions. I mean, we're going back to Junkertown, so at a bare minimum, we're going to need to see it there. And then also, we're going to see a lot of Reinhardt, Zarya. The added consistency of the damage that the new build of Hanzo can output really does wonders for his ability to just farm up dragons. So Zarya combos, we were seeing those with the old Hanzo in the last meta. So he is considerably better now, and we saw how much he fit into the meta before his adjustment was even made. So I think it's very safe to say we're going to see a lot more Hanzo from these teams in the playoffs. I'm really excited about it. He's always been him and Symmetra and Torbjorn are really kind of all tied for that guilty pleasure. Love to play. Please don't look at my career profile, so you don't know how much time I've spent playing them kind of heroes. So yeah, I'm really, really excited about that. Any thoughts on the new meta, Blevins? I know you haven't been super deep into playing recently, but you've played a bit. What have you thought of the new Hanzo? What do you think of the meta with that?
Yeah, I mean, new Hanzo feels really great, and I know that if someone like me can play Hanzo and not feel like complete and utter trash with it, it's probably pretty good. And if it's pretty good and someone like, I don't know, Libero was already crushing people with old Hanzo, it means a lot of good things for a team like NYXL being able to use Libero. And it also does, depending on how big of a factor it ends up being, like if it's such a huge swing, like we could see, and we'll talk about this right now, but spoiler alert, the Philly versus Boston matchup I think is a lot closer than a lot of people think, just based on the numbers. So it's entirely possible that the wild card factor here is the Hanzo player. The new meta, new Hanzo is the place that teams don't have film on these teams unless they're filming scrims or whatever, doing scrims. But I doubt that teams that are playing against each other in playoffs are scrimming against each other. I highly doubt that they're doing that. Or if you're listening, teams, don't do that, please. I'm sure they're smart enough to not, do that. But they don't have film on it. I mean, I'm assuming that most of these Overwatch League teams are going to be able to figure out, or already have figured out, the best strategies with new Hanzo and whatnot. But this is almost like and all the people that hate the Magic the Gathering references, plug your ears for a minute, but this is almost like the Pro Tour. Every one of the Pro Tours happens in a fresh format where no one has played. There's usually maybe one kind of big event before, but for the most part, all of the pros and all of the players playing in the Pro Tour are playing in this new format with new cards for the first time at high level. And there's always some spice, and you don't know necessarily what you're going to be playing against. You kind of theorize, okay, well, they'll probably play Hanzo, so we're going to play the thing that beats Hanzo, but maybe they're not playing Hanzo, and they're playing something else, or what beats the Hanzo beater? How deep are you going to go? How good is the Hanzo? Is there a certain strategy with Hanzo that's going to be really good that catches people off guard? I don't know, because I don't know how much the teams have been scrimming. I've seen way more videos of teams at amusement parks than them scrimming. So I don't know, but I think it definitely has the possibility to be a wild card for some of these matches, especially like this one, Boston v Philly, where it's actually quite close.
Yeah, it could take any preconceived notions we have about who the better teams are in these matchups going into them can really be turned on their head by either a brilliant decision when you change even just one hero like this. Or just a tragic decision if somebody goes the opposite direction with it and messes with their synergy. So there's a lot of opportunity for a shakeup here with even just this one hero change, which is essentially what's happening right now. But let's get right into it here, Blevins.
Yeah.
Go in, take a look at some of the numbers here. Again, this is the first matchup that you will be seeing. That's why we chose it. So in 9 days, July 11th, I believe it's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You will be seeing Philly versus Boston in the first match. And we do have the map order here for match 1 and match 2. As you guys know, we really do love looking at map statistics and things like that for these matchups. So we're going to go through each map 1 and map 2. We're going to let the map differential and the map results here pick the winner for you before we go into the positional battles and then our personal picks here for these matches. So starting things out, match 1 is going to be in Dorado. Straight away, we're not getting any clarity here. This is 6-4 for both teams. Dorado's unlikely to be a tie, but we do have a tiebreaker map. So for the sake of this conversation, we're going to use it. We're going to call this map a tie. Now we're going to go to Oasis, where Philly is 9-8 with a 53% win rate. Boston is 11-4. So they're going to take this map here in this exercise, and we'll go over to Eichenwald, which it's been a long time since we've seen Eichenwald.
Yeah, almost two completely different teams playing against each other.
Right. I mean, huge roster shakeups, things like that are all part of this. But back in stage 1, Eichenwald was 2-2-1, a 50% map for the Philadelphia Fusion, 4-1 for the Boston Uprising. I think that's especially notable because of how bad Boston was in stage 1. Like, they weren't a good team yet, but still they really had this map on lockdown. So a 2-0-1 lead here for the Boston Uprising after 3 maps. That does force us into Volskaya Industries at map number 4. Not a good Fusion map either, though. 2-8 here, really 20%.
Boston map too.
Boston is 10-0-1 on this map. So Boston takes the first set convincingly. If we look at the numbers here, we don't get into Junkertown, which is in Boston's favor.
Even if Philly wins the first map, doesn't matter.
Right. So the first match here in this set looks particularly favorable for Boston. If I'm being perfectly honest with you, I don't want that to be the case, but nonetheless, here we are. Going into match 2, though, things do even up a little bit. We start out on Junkertown. Like we said, that's a Boston map, 2-8 for the Fusion, and then 7-4 for Boston. So they have a 64% win rate there. By the numbers, looks very good for them. Now we go to Lijiang Tower, 11-4 for Philly. For a good map, they found one. 7-8 for Boston. So Philly is going to go ahead and take, by the numbers, on the second day, their first map of this playoff series. Going into Kings Row, this is a pretty close map. 4-6 for Philadelphia, 5-5 for Boston. This is a slight edge to Boston here, so we'll give them this map, but doesn't need to go that way. It's definitely close enough. There's some room here, but again, we'll tally one up for Boston here. Go to Hanamura. Now we have a 67% win rate for Philly at 8-4, 2-8 for Boston. This is a Philly map. This puts us into a decisive map 5, Blevins. You know, Dorado, it can't be drawn. But when we look at map numbers, it sure can be drawn. So we have to go to the tiebreaker of Nepal, which is, let's see, 7-6 for Philly and 4-7 for Boston. So unlikely to actually need that tiebreaker unless, you know, it's going to have to be like Kings Row or Hanamura gets drawn there. And we do have a decisive factor there. But it's likely to be decided on a coin flip on Dorado here. So, but with the tiebreaker map in Philly's favor, we're going to push it to map 3 and try to figure out what's going to happen here. It's going to be interesting. So Boston with the high seed here, they get to pick the first map. Now they're going to pick Junkertown, right? Because they have a 64% win rate to Philly's 20. And then Dorado's even, right? So why go to a fair fight when you can go to a fight you're favored in? So we have to assume they're going to pick Junkertown to start things off, and they're likely to win that map. If they do, Philly will pick the control map. They're going to go Lijiang Tower because they have a 73% win rate there to Boston's 47. The other option here is, of course, Oasis, which is decidedly in Boston's favor. So I feel confident they'll pick Lijiang in that situation. We've all seen the highlight reels that Carpe puts out on that map. So, all right, so it's 1-1 in the third decisive match here. We go Boston picking the hybrid map. They're going to go Eichenwald. Again, this might not be the case because of how long it's been. We don't know where they stand here. But assuming the map win rates play out, Boston would win on Eichenwald 80 to 50%. And then we go Philly picks the next map. They're going to go Hanamura, right? They win 67% of the time there to Boston's 20%. So then we are back in map 5, Blevins, and now I have a question.
What is
Because
that
when I look at this, I go, well, if Boston's picking the map, this is the same conversation before. Junkertown's not a fair fight. They have an advantage there. But Dorado's dead even. So, if they have the choice and they can double up Junkertown, they're going to. And to be full disclosure, in Contenders Season 1, it's exactly what happened in the EU Finals, is they ended up repeating a map. The general consensus was there that wasn't really the best way to go about that. It felt a little clunky and weird to see them play the same map again. So they might not be able to. And if that's the case, they need to go into the tied map of Dorado at 60% win rate aside. And if they do, and it's a tie and we have to use the tiebreaker to figure it out, then Philly wins based off the tiebreaker map differential.
Right.
If they can repeat, then Boston would win in the 5th decisive map there. So this one is literally, looking at it by the numbers, inconclusive, because we don't know definitively what the rule will be.
We don't know what the rule is.
It's not really how numbers are supposed to work, and I apologize that our first deep dive broke down that way, but I can't really change it.
Super draw.
So we're basically like still tied after looking at all the maps here, but it's just really goes to show how close this is, especially two teams that weren't coming out of the season playing their best Overwatch. I think there's a lot of room here. Like, I think if we were to poll 100 people, it's going to be like 75% are going to probably pick Philadelphia to win this matchup, given how bad Boston looked. But Boston didn't all look bad, right? Like, they still had some mechanically sound performances from a good number of players on their team, and they really did rebound at the end of stage 4. Like, they could have just completely washed out and gone from 10-0 to what, like 2-8 or something like that. Looked like very, very possible for the Boston team in stage 4. They turned it around a little bit. Philly did as well. They continued to be kind of up and down, good Philly, bad Philly, all the way through the stage. So this is a really, really close matchup. One I'm honestly more excited now after looking at how close those numbers are to see this one play out. It's a really good first match for me because I have no dog in this particular fight.
Well, you have the dog of not Boston.
Right. Yeah, that's my only hope. Right. It's just I do enjoy watching Boston lose, so I have that going for me. But honestly, maybe not, because of how close this really is. A couple of these maps are really, really Boston favored, like Volskaya Industries 10-0-1, Oasis at 11-4. Eichenwald's at an 80% win rate. It's a small sample size, but so there's a good amount of maps here that are really, really in Boston's favor. And when you look at the Philly side, that's not really very much so the case. Almost the opposite, right? Like, you've got Volskaya at 20%, Junkertown at 20%, and then the rest of them are like 60 to 55%, something like that. They're good on those maps, but it's not really the ones they tend to dominate on. And with their inconsistencies, maybe those maps don't exist. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't have their full map win rate here, just these maps in particular. So, really, really excited about this one. It's going to be super, super close. But anything to add about these map numbers here, Blevins, before we move into the positional bit?
Yeah, I mean, so take this with a grain of salt for sure, because like the numbers only mean so much. How you perform that day or that weekend, obviously, at the end of the day, that's what matters. Philly really only needs to flip a couple of coins. I mean, really, they only need to flip one coin onto the other side here to come out across, just based on the numbers alone. Boston has looked not so great lately, but the performance at the end of the season, I'm almost like you can alleviate that a little bit because there's been so much time off, and like I don't know how much the teams are practicing compared to each other. I have to imagine that they're probably practicing a decent amount, or at least practicing well. And also, they're practicing specifically for this match. That's the only thing they need to focus on. There's no split time. They don't need to worry about their next opponent this week like they would for Overwatch League. It's 100%. All we're watching is Boston tape. All we're watching is Philly tape. We know exactly what they have done in the past and what we need to do to beat them there. Philly has a couple of extra options, as they have a more flexible roster than Boston. Boston is not known for their flexibility particularly, so maybe that's an edge towards Philly, but also Boston has shown that even in the face of adversity, they can turn a completely undefeated regular season stage. I always love adding that little caveat because the Boston fans get so mad. They're like, oh, it was a perfect stage. I'm like, oh, so you got the stage title?
So you're the champions? Yeah, you guys won it all?
Stage 3
No?
champions? Oh, what?
I guess
Zero
we need
stage
a different
titles?
word other than perfect.
Yeah, perfect is certainly not the word to use
Well,
there.
perfect means to me, yeah.
God, I mean, if anything, NYXL had the perfect stage.
Arguably more perfect.
Yeah, way more perfect.
I wouldn't make that argument, but I could.
The dollars that
Boston
they
fans,
okay,
I definitely could.
all right. I've rubbed enough salt in that wound, almost enough salt. So I mean, man, this is a really good one to start it off. I think is basically the thesis here is that there's not going to be. I'm really hoping that there's not going to be any clean sweeps here, and I don't think the teams are. I mean, that's just no one wants to see that in the playoffs, right? I think the teams are close enough. All the teams in the playoffs here are close enough. There's been enough time that any team can beat any team, and even just by the numbers entirely, man, this looks real close. So
yeah, I certainly don't want to see any 3-0, 3-0 starts or anything like that. That would be particularly brutal. But the way the match one map pool works out here for Boston is just kind of perfect for him, to be honest. But let's move the conversation into the positional battles a little bit, because I personally think that this first one, the DPS conversation, is what's going to decide this entire series in both directions. Because going into this new meta, when we look at the DPS battle of Carpe versus Striker and EQO versus Mistakes, it gets really muddied by the fact that this Hanzo rework is coming in, because we know for a fact that Carpe is just a really good Hanzo player. Okay, but we also know EQO is kind of the projectile player on the team, and Carpe is certainly the Widowmaker on the team. So I think we're going to see a lot of double sniper compositions in this meta, and I think that's going to give Philly an opportunity to either level themselves up or shoot themselves in the foot here, because we've seen EQO at times when they wanted to run Widow Tracer in the heat of the moment, go over to the Widowmaker. And to be perfectly honest with you, he performed more than admirably when given the opportunity on Widowmaker. He's proven to be, in my opinion, a very, very good Widowmaker. So now how does Philadelphia handle this? Who plays the Hanzo? Who plays the Widow? It probably depends a lot on what other heroes they might want to switch to, and on a later point in the map, stuff like that. They might even just be able to be perfectly fluid with it and change on a map by map basis. That might be something that they really have the power to do. So I'm really interested in how that conversation plays out. But if we look just specifically at the numbers, and as you guys know, the stats button on the website didn't ungray itself until right at the end of the season. So we have stage 4 numbers, but honestly, that's a good thing, right? Because what good would full season comparisons do when talking about EQO and how much did Shadowburn play at times? The same thing for Mistakes. He didn't play full season. So for all intents and purposes, this is perfect for us. So let's take a look at the Striker versus Carpe comparison. When we look, the Boston DPS player, really the star of the team, averages 13.5 kills per 10 minutes, 6 deaths per 10 minutes, and 11.5 thousand damage per 10 minutes. So a pretty solid number there. Yeah. Unfortunately for him, if we go over to the Carpe side of the coin,
the greatest fish.
16.2 eliminations per 10. 5.25, so 5.25 deaths per 10 minutes. Both of those numbers are considerably better than Striker is here. So he's more efficient at killing people.
1 fewer death.
Right, and he dies less often. So those are 2 pretty big factors. Now, to Striker's credit, while dying more, he is able to output a considerable amount more damage than Carpe's been able to. Now, I think part of that might have to do with some of the hero. I don't know. We don't have hero playtime numbers or anything like that to fall back on here for this conversation to know, was Striker playing Junkrat more than Carpe was or anything like, because Carpe wasn't going to play it at all. But nonetheless, at the end of the day, I want my DPS to kill people more than I want them to damage them. So I'm going to give the edge in this particular fight to Carpe here. I just think with, if this was a Tracer meta, it would be a different conversation and I'd probably flip it. But not the case going into the meta that we're going into. No, harm meant or I don't know. Nothing meant to Striker here to say Carpe's better.
No strike against him.
Yeah, there we go. You got there for me. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I'm going to give this one to Carpe here. Blevins, any disagreement as far as that particular battle goes?
No, I mean, it's real. I wouldn't want to bet against either of them.
Right.
But if I'm going to bet against Striker, there's probably, if I'm talking about only DPS players, there's maybe 2 or 3 players that I would bet over him, and Carpe is one of them.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, Carpe also is. I mean, Striker seems more like the silent killer, and the like he's doing a lot for his team, but it's not the big flashy like I'm gonna put the team on my back and go ham. It's more like I'm gonna do a lot of work consistently. Carpe, man, he has probably certainly a top 5 clip of the entire league
Li Zhang, yeah.
on Li Zhang, where it just says, "I want to win this point. Hold my beer." Like
winnable.
yeah,
winnable.
just crushes the other team, and like those types of plays. Even though like you can't rely on them, those are the types of plays in a matchup that looks as close as this that can define a whole match, and it's the one where we're going to be watching the clip forever. It's going to be on the ESPN 20-year anniversary from Overwatch League Season 1,
right,
where Carpe crushed Boston in that first round. Like that, he has the ability. He is that franchise level player that has that like killer instinct. Where like Striker has it probably, but it's just not. It's not the same.
And it's not known to be on the heroes that he's going to have to play either.
Exactly.
And we can't downplay enough, those moments are amplified. They mean more in the playoffs than they do in the regular season.
Momentum is so huge.
It's so big, and just the stakes, right? Like everything is, you lose this match here, this best of 3 of best of 5s, the nested best ofs or whatever,
right,
however the right way to word this is. You lose this set, you're done. The season's over for you. You go home. It's not like, oh, well, we're prepping for the match in 2 days after Carpe destroyed us. It's not like that. It's you're done. You're
you leave it all on the table.
You're planning your off-season stream schedule, and you're devoting yourself to the World Cup. It's not what anybody wants to be doing here. So the ability to make those big plays in the big moment is definitely a big advantage here for Philadelphia. Moving on, though, there are other DPS players to consider here, and EQO is back. He's healthy. He did miss a little bit of time this past stage, but now Mistakes has been a little bit settled into his role. They had the really good stage 3 with them, the iffy stage 4 with them, and when we look at the numbers in stage 4, I think we're really starting to see something here about who's going to win the DPS battle between these teams. We've got EQO with 17.28 eliminations per 10. I'm gonna stop saying per 10.
Just round it.
Just know that it is. Yeah,
it's all
a little over
17.
17
He didn't
eliminations.
have 17 total elims in stage 4. That's not how that worked.
6 deaths, and then almost 14,000 damage here. And then when we go to the mistake side of things, we're looking at 14 eliminations. So that's more than 3 fewer. We're looking at over 6 deaths, so it's pretty close in deaths, but again, it is in EQO's favor here. And then in damage, again, it's 2,000 higher. It's 11,800 or so for mistakes. So EQO is besting him in literally every category across the board. I don't want to lay this all at Mistakes' feet. He's being asked to play heroes that were never in his hero pool, and the team is really making do without their projectile player here. So they've got 2 hit scans, and it's going to be really interesting to see if Mistakes can continue to level up, because he looked really good in stage 3. They found a way to make him comfortable there, and I don't think he was necessarily really bad in the final stage. He just wasn't comfortable, and I do think we saw him get better. So it's an opportunity for Boston to really surprise here. Like, I don't think it's out of the question that Mistakes could outperform EQO in this set. I just can't predict it based on the numbers here. So I think this one is also going to go in Philadelphia's favor here. Anything to add on that one, Buzz?
There's one category that wasn't marked here and isn't on the website anywhere, and that's the category of heart. And this one, I'm kidding. I wish I had like inspirational like Airbud music to start playing as I go on this like monologue about how mistakes has fought adversity. But no, I think the only thing I can say here that potentially could have mistakes being deceptively under evaluated here is that in stage 3 mistakes didn't have the same amount of he had a big plate to fill, right? Because he who must not be named obviously no longer on the team, and mistakes basically went from I play once like every 2 weeks to I have to start now. But that's obviously a lot, but it wasn't necessarily as much in game because Striker could play Tracer, and Striker is a very, very good Tracer and will create space for you. He'll clean up your dirty work. He'll do this, that, and the other thing. And I think perhaps, and I don't know if this is the case, but it could be, mistakes just tried to play stage 4 like stage 3, and was expecting the same amount of pressure to be on him as stage 4 or in stage 4 or stage 3, and that just bit him because that's just not the case. Striker's not going to be able to clean up and do as much like percentage wise for the team because he's not able to play Tracer in the Brigitte meta. If Boston has identified that and can find a way to mitigate that perhaps and maybe alleviate some of the pressure on mistakes, or maybe get him to understand and realize that he does need to fill this amount of team damage and responsibility on the team. Maybe they can adapt and adjust to that. But as the numbers stand, it's not looking good for mistakes, and even in the imaginary category that I just made up called Heart, I don't think that's worth a whole heck of a lot in terms of capturing objectives and killing opposing players.
And for what it's worth, I mean, I would almost have to give the Heart category to the Fusion DPS players here. Like EQO coming off the ladder out of nowhere from a country that's not really otherwise represented in professional Overwatch. Carpe screaming winnable while he kills entire teams. His team's trying to reset. I don't know. Maybe the Boston players are just too quiet. It doesn't mean you don't have heart. It just means I don't see it or hear it.
The only thing I would say, if we're gonna talk more about the imaginary category of Heart, mistakes did have to fill pretty big shoes on a very short notice, and did admirably in stage 3. So that's definitely worth something. But I think if I'm doing pick'ems, I got 2 check marks next to Philly here for the DPS categories.
All right, well, now we're going to move things into the tank conversation a little bit. And again, we'll start things off with the main tanks. That's going to be Sato versus Gamzu. Whether or not you think Philly was correct in starting Sato or not isn't really the conversation. They played him all through the stage, which tells me they're going to keep rolling him out. Like, you wouldn't play him all stage 4 to just swap Fraggy back in, whether they should or not. I think you should.
Get the beard in.
Anyways, looking at the numbers here, when we look at Sato, again, these aren't necessarily the most telling stats in the world for the tank, but we have what we have, and we're working with what we have. So for Sato, we're looking at a little over 14 eliminations. We're looking at about 5.5 deaths and 8,500 damage here, again, per 10. Gamzu on the other side is 12.5 eliminations. He's 6 deaths, and they're literally 3 damage apart here. So we'll call the damage a push. So again, this is a little deceiving here. I think when we look at these numbers, the fact that these numbers are as close as they are, like the deaths is like 0.41 apart. The eliminations is definitely in Sato's favor, and then the damage numbers are even, but Gamzu didn't have a team that was performing well for like 3/4 of this stage. And I think just the sheer fact that he's in the ballpark here and that we're not looking at like EQO versus mistakes numbers really tells me that Gamzu was probably the better player. And I think the eyeball test would tell me that as well. It's not going to be a surprise to anybody that I'm not super impressed with Sato so far. They just really haven't shown me enough with him to really make me think that he is what was promised, what the prophecy that was foretold about the
Right.
Philadelphia Fusion tanks. I'm not seeing it yet, and I think these numbers do bear that out a little bit when you factor in team performances, and especially in the tank category when talking about eliminations, deaths, and damage. These are things that come to tanks with wins, with fight wins. Like the Winston mops 2 people up after the Widowmakers killed the first 3, right? But like,
Right.
so I think those numbers really are benefited by fight wins in the tank category, especially the main tank. So personally, even though the numbers do slightly favor Sato, I'm going to put the main tank role here. I'm going to give a check mark to the Boston Uprising. I think right now Gamzu, I mean, he's been solid all season. We actually saw him have to go back to Korea for a very brief time.
Yeah.
The team didn't look great, and then he came back, and it was like the flip of a switch. Like, I think Gamzu's the rock for this team now, and I think he's like I said, the linchpin, and really if Boston's going to get back on track, it's going to be because Gamzu and Note and everybody's back on the same page again, and they're all diving with Gamzu, making those coordinated dives, whether there's enough dive left to play or not. Gamzu's a fine Reinhardt play, but the coordination needs to be there between the tank line and the rest of the team. I think that's what's been missing for Boston. And yeah, I'm going to give Gamzu the edge here, Blevins. Who do you got in this tank fight?
Yeah, I think I tend to agree here with you. I do want to give it to Gamsu here. The thing about Sato is that, he's whether he's with the team or not, he's not able to play in the first 3 stages of Overwatch League. Like, that's something. Like, even if he's on paper or in the past a air quotes better than main tank than Fraggy was or is, Fraggy's got 3 stages of Overwatch League experience, and being like, if you're in the, I can tell you from personal experience, if you're in the room, if you're in the war room watching film with the team, if you're a starter and you're going to be playing and you're going to be playing, you are paying 200% more attention than the person sitting on the bench that can't play. Not to say that Sato isn't paying attention or isn't participating with the team. He is not paying the same amount and taking everything to heart like the people who have to play next week are. It's just, you're just not going to do it. You don't exert that much mental energy to something that you're not going to do. And not having that for 3/4 of the league is definitely something that is not an advantage for him. And I think it's going to be, midway through next season, perhaps, that we start to see maybe the full potential of Sato if he's still playing. That being said, I agree with everything that you said with Gamsu. It'd be really hard for me to pick any player that is in Sato's position here. Even like Sinatra and Super, like, it's tough for me to pick them, to put them over a player that is played the whole season, unless they're just remarkably better than them. And I don't think that's the case here with the Sato versus Gamsu.
Yeah, something I've probably done a really poor job of explaining so far as we've had these conversations is I do think Sato's a mechanically better player than Fraggy. I just think the team plays better with that aggressive style of main tank that really pushes and creates the space. How do you focus on Carpe when there's a Fraggy swinging a hammer in your face, getting earth shatters every 2 seconds? Like, it's just crazy. But moving on here, we do have another tank battle to discuss. That's Hotba versus Note. Taking a look at Hotba again, I think this is a similar story where the stats don't necessarily give you everything, but they're even a little closer here, I think, too, which would give us something, a little extra. But Hotba is sitting at 16.5 eliminations and 3 deaths with 10.5k damage. When we look at Note, we've got 16 elims. We're rounding a little bit there. It's 15.8. About 4 deaths, again, rounding down a little bit there. It's 4.17. And then considerably more damage here. It's just shy of 13,000. Note has been the surprise player for me of the season. I've been really, really big on Note all season long. And again, the eliminations are a little lower. The deaths are a little higher. The wins on the stage are a little lower, and I think that tells us what we need to know. I think the sheer fact that he's outputting with more deaths, considerably more deaths here when you factor in the play time, everything like that. The fact that Note is out damaging Hotba, I think, speaks volumes. This is a player that even decidedly, I think, favors the Diva as far as which of the two off tanks he plays. And I think Hotba's been playing a little bit more Zarya, if I had to guess, than Note, and Zarya should out-damage Diva in this conversation as well. So I think that's telling. This is another tank battle conversation that I think comes down to the eye test, and Note has just been just a treat to the eye test all season long. Really enjoyed watching him progress and grow as a player from being a standout on a bad team at the early stages of the season to being a huge part of what made them so successful on their hot streak and on their big run in stage 3. I think he's going to continue to impress and perform. But yeah, so I'm going to give the second tank battle here to the Boston Uprising. What do you got for this one, Blevins?
Yeah, I don't even think it's close. Like the Sato versus Gamsu, I think you could make an argument for either, but this is just resoundingly Note. Hoppa might be he might be the least recognizable player of the Overwatch League. Like, I bet if you polled people and were like, which one of these players doesn't play in the Overwatch League, I bet there's a number of people that would pick Hotba if you just gave them a random smattering of names. And Note has been a star to basically for the Boston Uprising. He's really kind of come together around his Diva play, and like you said, he's had some great damage output. He's dying a little bit more, but again, like, they had a horrible stage. Like, I bet if you extrapolated this out more, you'd have way better stats for Note versus Hotba if you went out to the other stages. And like, I think this is the other thing to put here is that this matchup, Hotba versus Note, is if Hotba, I guess this is a different way to look at it that might make you think something out. So if Note does awful here, if this battle is just resoundingly a Note loss, then I think that will hurt Boston Uprising much more than if it's a Hotba loss for the Fusion, if that makes sense. I think that Note is a much more important and pivotal key player for the Boston Uprising than Hotba is for the Fusion. So I don't know if that shifts it one way or the other, where they're more of a linchpin than the other, but I mean, I don't even think it's close. I'm windmill slamming Note here.
Something I do want to put on everybody's radar, and it might sound a little crazy considering we both think Note's the better player in this position battle, everything like that. If I was right, and that we're going to see a lot less dive tanks, and we're going to see a lot more Ryan Zarya, there's a non-zero chance that Boston rolls out Kalios, who's notedly a very, very good Zarya player, one of the best. We would have put it like going into the league, we would have said Zunba and then Kalios, I think probably number 2 as far as the best Zarya players in Overwatch League as a whole. So
Gaguri, who doesn't even play the Zarya on our team,
right? Yeah,
okay, thanks.
It would have been in the conversation for sure, but I'm not expecting that to happen. I just want to put it on everybody's radar. Don't be completely surprised. It's nothing even crazy, I think, if Boston does. I just wouldn't do it because of how good Note's been. And
might switch it up depending on the map.
And I think they did try it a little bit in stage 4, if I'm remembering correctly. And by the end, when they were stabilizing, it was with Note on the off tank, and there was no more Kalios. So definitely one. So we're basically 1-1 here, Blevins. I mean, we gave both DPS battles to Philly, and then we gave both tanks to Boston. So we're going to have to go into the supports here to kind of figure this one out. Since our map breakdown wasn't even decisive, there's a question mark on that one. We've told you nothing. How many words have we said and told you guys nothing? That's really the most impressive feat of the show so far.
26,240. This is now the 7th. No.
Anyways, going into the support conversation, we'll start with the main supports. It's going to be Neptuno versus Kelix. Looking at things here, I mean, because Neptuno's in the conversation, we'll talk about eliminations.
These stats have almost no bearing on how good or bad these players are going to be.
Well, the healing does take something into effect here, but when we look at Neptuno, he's averaging 2.3 eliminations, and then we've got Kelix at 0.8. When we go to deaths, we've got Neptuno at 3.5, and we've got Kellex getting close to 4.5. Damage, it's crazy to talk about with Mercies, but if there's a decisive advantage here. It's 885. It's not a lot of damage. 885. But remember, I'm going to remind you here because it's kind of crazy. A Mercy's out there doing almost 1,000 damage every 10 minutes. He's doing something different on Mercy than I do when I play, that's for sure. My numbers look more like Kellex at around 257. And then when we go into the healing category, which I guess might matter, we're pretty close, but there is a slight advantage to Kellex here. 10,344 for Neptuno, 10,623 for Kellex. So a really close positional battle here for the main support position. Again, I'm going to point out, with Kellex losing all those extra fights, right, with all the problems the team had, he's still right there out healing. I mean, minorly, but out healing Neptuno. Neptuno is widely considered to be one of, if not the best Mercy players in Overwatch League. Kellex, I think, right now with Mercies, the way I view it is like there's the ones that have been screwing up a lot and I notice all the time.
Yeah. And
then there's the rest of them who are probably playing pretty well, because we're never going to get Mercy perspective, nor do we want it. If any spectators from Blizzard are watching, nobody wants to see that unless Neptuno's got his gun out. You can keep the camera off of him.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give the advantage to Philly for Neptuno here on the ability to be a fragger on the Mercy. Like it might not come up, it might never once come up that it's a huge impact play, but we've seen it happen on more than one occasion where Neptuno steps out and makes a play. In our top 10 plays of the week series that we did this season, Neptuno shows up on Mercy, guns out, like shooting people. He shows up in the kill, like a 3K or something like that, in the middle of a team fight. We mentioned it before, the clutch plays, the goofy stuff, like everything's amplified in the playoffs. It all matters so much more. And I think that when we're looking at two players who are both very stout, very strong Mercy healers, Neptuno has that element that nobody else in Overwatch League has. I think he's going to win all these heads-up position battles, except for maybe against like Arc or something like that. So I'm really big on Neptuno in this fight. I think he gives them an edge here. Who do you got in the support?
So I agree with what you said, but I'm going to make the opposite argument for the clutch plays with the Mercy player, because I agree clutch plays are huge for playoff scenarios, but you don't want to take unnecessary risks with a mainstay and a rock of a team like a Mercy. Like, on the complete flip side of that, of the making the clutch play with the Mercy, if you go out of position and go into battle Mercy and you just die, that's horrifically bad. Something like Carpe going off with Widowmaker, like that's just what he's meant to do. He's not going out of his way to do that. He's just performing better at his position. If Neptuno is going out of his way to pull out the battle Mercy and fails, he's not only detracting from his healing that he's doing, but also he's dead. So it's a double-edged sword, and again, it's going to rely completely on how they actually perform, and the numbers show a very, very close match. But I honestly think that the battle like if I'm just theory crafting entirely, and I don't know the guys at all, and I don't know how they like to play with each other at all, I'm just going theory crafting, I'm telling the Mercy, just play it by the book. Play as conservatively as you can. We need you to be the constant for the team. Don't go off and try to kill people. So I honestly think with the numbers being so close, I'm going to give a slight nod here to Kellex.
Disappointed. There's no spike in his death numbers, Blevins. You gotta respect the Battle Mercy.
No,
but no,
I'm not saying that there is, but it's to quote the theme song for the March Madness. It's one shining moment. That's all you get.
Did not know that was the theme song.
One shining moment.
They should pick a more hype song or something. That song's like depressing.
It is kind of depressing, and it was like this is a complete sidebar story, a tangent story here, but for JV basketball, the coach would every year have a different theme song for like the team that we'd always, every single game would warm up to, and like every one of our practices would start with it just so we'd get like into the game mood whenever we heard that song. And the song for my year for JV was One Shining Moment, and it's like the least hype song ever, like you said. But I still get hyped every time I hear it because I was just like natural adrenaline. It's like I'm like a Pavlov's dog over here, like drooling when I hear a bell.
My football team would like get ourselves amped up with Thunderstruck by AC/DC. So I was a complete
For varsity,
opposite
we
end
did.
of the
We had
spectrum.
Through the Fire and the Flames for varsity
that's a good one,
basketball.
too.
Yeah.
That's a good one, too.
We listened to it before every game. It was insane. But yeah, no,
Anyways.
JV was one shining moment.
bringing this back to an Overwatch conversation as we are nearing the end of the show here and the end of this conversation. We've got one last positional battle to talk about. This one's interesting because this is Boombox versus Aim God, and Boombox is a player that I was, you'll know, Blevins, super hyped about coming into the league. As a Zen main, Masters again, by the way, did my placements this season already. Still in Masters, just in case anybody was wondering. Yeah, so Boombox was one that I thought was kind of underperforming all season long. He was one of my favorite Zen players going into the season. Didn't really perform up to it and live up to it, but I to give him credit where it's due, really rebounded late in the year. I thought stage 4 was a really good stage for him, and he started to perform well. Now, Aim God was one that just came in randomly, took over the starting job from Neko in the Houston Outlaws matchup.
When
stage
Neko
4.
was doing really well too,
Yeah, Neko never really dropped off, but Aim God just came in, and in the tire fire that was Boston at the time, really stood out as an improvement in the position. And I think it really kind of gives them a bit of an X factor, right? Because now he's going to be a little more ingrained into the team and their strategies, and maybe they're able to get even more out of him. And he looked like a player that, I mean, nobody's mechanically on a level as Jonak, but as far as killing potential and just everything like that, he looks like somebody that might have that upward potential to really be a big fragger for a team like Jonak is for NY. But looking at the numbers here, we've got Boombox just shy of 12 eliminations, 11.7, 4.5 deaths, 10,200 and 10 and a quarter damage here, K damage. And then the healing numbers are about 7,500. Now, when we go to the Aim God side of things, we've got a little more eliminations. We're at a solid 12, a very, very similar death numbers, but a little higher for Aim God here. The damage is a little bit lower, but 300 lower. I mean, it's right in that ballpark, so about a push there. And then when we look at the healing numbers, that's where I think Boombox is really shining here. As you know, he's got the 7,500, and we've got Aim God with 6,800. So a decided advantage there for Boombox. This one's a little bit closer, and it's the inconsistency and the improvement of Boombox late has me wondering, because going into this without looking at numbers, I'd have said Aim God has kind of the edge here. But looking at the numbers, I mean, Boombox really did step up. You know, there was some bigger, you know, we talked about the big moments. He had more kind of carry plays at times in stage 4 than I think he's had. He's shown up in the kill feed a little more often. If he can keep doing what he's doing, then I think this one does go in favor of Boombox. But this one is so razor thin that I'm like hesitant to even call it and just maybe call it a push. But I'm going to man up and make a decision here. I'm going to go with Boombox, pick him for this role. But really crazy close, Blevins. I'm curious who you like more.
Yeah, I mean, oh man, it's so close. Like you look at, and like even the category of healing where it's as decided in this matchup as it is across any of the stats. It's only a 10%, less than a 10% difference between the two. And I mean, healing output for your Zen is only worth so much, depending on how you play it. I mean, man, it's so hard to call it. But my gut, just if I had to answer without thinking any more about it, I'm going with Aim God here. He just seems like he has more of that, like you said, X factor for Boston. And like, man, I remember when we were talking after stage 1 for Neko, he was like the top rated support for fantasy
Really
for foul
high
play.
up
I think he actually was the top rated support for fantasy. And like, Yeah, just bench him and play Aim God instead. Like, he's that good. It's like, man, that's something. And
Gutsy call by Boston. Like, credit where it's due for them to know
They
what
made a
they
lot
had
of
in a
gutsy
player they
calls.
just picked up. Because he was a late addition. He came in, he was announced considerably after the window actually closed.
right.
Right? Like, because they were the whole he
I
must not be
remember.
named fiasco, like
Yeah.
pushed the announcement a little bit, I think. And at least I don't think they wanted to have like, oh, we're terminating this guy's contract and then we're adding this one. Like, I think they
Right.
wanted a breath
Yeah, I want it to be
in
separate.
the news cycle there. So credit to him. And listen, I think there's more opportunity for Aim God to like make up ground. Like I said, like
Yeah.
he's going to be more involved in the strategy. He's going to feel much more comfortable on stage. All that stuff won't be a factor like it was this stage for him, or at least as much. Everybody's going to be a little nervous on the playoff stage. I'll guarantee you that. But really, as the closest of all the positional battles by far, essentially a coin flip. But yeah, if Aim God's able to continue leveling up, hard to say continue when he just started this good.
Right.
And I don't know that he's shown a ton of improvement, but he didn't have a ton of opportunity to. Yeah, really,
Does
really
this
close.
mean that we bring out everyone's second favorite host here?
Well, that would be the third because I mean the real.
Oh
coin-
man, we
your coin
finally
got
have
benched.
both. This coin is pretty nice though. Look at that.
But no, I mean, honestly, I don't think we're going to need the coins here because at the end of the day, I mean, we can tell people what the coin is, but it's not going to decide anything.
No, the coin never decides anything except it decides everything.
Everything.
I don't know. I think people want to know what the coin thinks.
All right. Well. I mean, which coin? Because now we've got an internal.
we'll go with- we'll
should
go
we
with your
flip a
coin.
third coin?
No.
Decide which coin.
No, we'll go with the beard coin. Although,
right,
hold on,
so-
no, hold on. We can't do the beard coin because the beard coin is obviously going to favor Fraggy's team. That's just unfair.
Or will it punish them because they're not playing Fraggy? They've got a clean save and
Who knows? Okay, all right.
All right.
Flip it. The
So-
beard is Philly.
I mean, if it's got to be, but tails never fails, and you're trying to make the coin pick Boston, which is going to upset me. But we'll go Philadelphia here, and then we will go Boston there. Oh man, it's no good, Blevins. It's going to be a tails.
Boston?
I told you. Why would you do this to me?
All right,
I
the
knew it
coin
was gonna
picked
happen.
Boston. The map differential showed us nothing. The player matchup was as close to his push.
Split there.
Yeah.
You split. Like you went both
did
for
split.
Philly on DPS, both for Boston on tank, 1-1 on support. So you're truly split.
I'm very split
So I'm gonna we're gonna keep the tension high on what Blevins is gonna pick. Mine's already a little bit out there because I did pick Boombox over Aim God. So my selection here is I'm going to be picking the Philadelphia Fusion, but I'm gonna say before looking at any of these numbers, I would have thought Philly was going to win. The first two sets.
We were talking with people when we were playing Realm Royale, and the quote "Philadelphia is going to win 100% was definitely thrown out there.
Yeah. I don't think that's the case anymore. I'm going to have to say this one's going to be pretty close. I think Boston's going to squeak out that first set. The map numbers don't lie. I mean they lie a little bit, but I don't think they're lying completely here. I think those are some rough maps for Philly to start things out. But I will take Philly in the third match. The third match here to win it all. It's going to be super close though. Honestly, I could see this one going to the full 5 on the second day, and then going deep in the third day as well. So I'm going to give Philly a narrow win here. This is closer than I thought, considering the struggles Boston was having. But hopefully they're able to take advantage of this reset because I'm trying to give them a little bit of a not really a grace period. I'm blanking on all the words that I want to use today, but I'm just trying to give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt. There we go. I found it. That they're going to be able to stabilize and look more like late stage for Boston, which could at least hang with these teams. It's not like Philly was a world beater either. Philly's actually the 6th seed. They're the low seed here, even though they're kind of the consensus favorite from everything I've heard so far. So yeah, I'm going to take Philly in a nail biter here.
If I'm picking with, I don't even know, like everything here that would lead me to believe to pick with my brain is almost entirely inconclusive. So I'm just going to do what I've done since the beginning and pick it with my heart. And then, of course, it's going to be with the Philadelphia Fusion. 100% got to go with it. I mean, they're my second favorite team in the league, so I'm obviously going to root for them. And me rooting for them actively helps them. I don't care what anyone says about how it couldn't possibly have any effect. They know. that there's an extra person rooting for them and wearing those awesome Philadelphia Fusion Nike sneakers that I have, rooting for them. I don't have Boston Uprising sneakers, so I'm not going to give them they're not getting my blessing.
It might not have any effect, but if Dallas has shown us one thing this season, it's that not having any effect is sometimes a good thing.
Oh, brought it back around. But that's going to be it for the deep dive. Man, I thought there was going to be a little more conclusion here, but it was a great setup for how great of a match this is going to be, or at least is billed to be. I don't know if we've seen anything as close as this.
On paper, looks super close, and we've even got the added bonus of like both teams are wildly inconsistent. Boston's a little more streaky than like hit or miss. Spotty is how I would describe Philly, not Boston. But if both of these teams show up and play, either both play really well or both play really poorly, we're going to be in for some very entertaining Overwatch. And I'm really, honestly, 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago, let's say, was not even super excited for this matchup. I thought it was just going to kind of be Philly, but really looking at the numbers changed this a lot, and I think brings this one back into a very hotly contested matchup. And I don't think Philly versus Boston is like a non-rivalry. I think that exists elsewhere in others. Like they're pretty close cities.
It's the rematch of the Super Bowl, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So we all know what way that went this past time. I was very happy about that. So let's hope that continues.
Yeah. So that's going to bring us to the end of the deep dive here. Do we have any reviews or anything? Death? Someone in
we
the
do.
Chat
yeah, we have
was mentioning that we may have a review or two.
Raycor, a longtime fan, finally got off his butt and decided to leave us a review. Really appreciate that, Raycor. I'm giving you a little bit of flack because I've already read your review and I know what you're going to make me say. But one thing I want to say is it was brilliantly titled. Like probably the best title to any review we have.
Okay,
it's called "Two Ambitious Nerds and a Dream."
Wait, is it TWO or TOO?
The number two, option 3.
Okay. I thought it was like, these nerds are too ambitious.
No, not that would have been good too. But also, so the text of the review here is: join Deathblow and the Blevins as they go in depth into the world of Overwatch baked goods, Boston sports fandom, and the charms of having a clean shaven face. And most importantly, high level Overwatch coverage and analysis. Everything you heard before that was not true. And I'll even throw in the high-level Overwatch coverage and analysis as a lie as well. These guys put in the hard work, cranking out hours of content each week across several different shows. A more dynamic duo than Farah and Mercy, these two never fail to entertain. The Discord community is lit. You should probably join. Signed, Raycor. Thank you so much, Raycor. And an on-air shout-out and a thank you for running the power rankings contest. You fronted the prize for that. Everything that was completely you devised the rules. Everything went above and beyond. So we really do appreciate you contributing to the Discord community and the show as well. Also, anytime you want to go out on a limb and just smack down the Houston Outlaws, I really appreciate that you've been just bit every time you've done that, and it's gone in the Outlaws' favor. So if we could have just gotten you to hate them a little bit more vocally throughout the season, we might still be alive. But I appreciate you doing what you could for us, in the Outlaws fan nation here. So, big thanks, Raycor, for the review. As always, guys, the number one way you can help out the show and help us, reach new viewers and just show us a little bit of love if you enjoy our content is to leave us a nice iTunes review like this from Raycor. We'll read it on the show like we did just now. You can make me say all sorts of crazy things that I would normally never, ever utter under any circumstances, as Raycor has also demonstrated here as well. And we would really appreciate it. So thank you so much, and hope to read more reviews in the coming episodes.
Yes, definitely head over to iTunes and throw us a review there. And also throw the other shows a review: Blackwatch Report, Around the Payload, All Things Considered, Foul Play. If you listen to any of those shows, or even if you don't, just go ahead and throw a review on there. And also start listening to those shows. Throw a review on there. It helps every single review, every single like, comment, share, retweet, all of that stuff. Like you think, they've been doing this for years. They got 1 million followers. We don't. Every single thing, every single person in the Discord, every single like, comment, subscription, iTunes review, Patreon, Twitch sub, Twitch Prime sub, all that stuff helps out tremendously. So if you think that we don't need it, we absolutely can and will accept all of that stuff. So thank you everyone who does contribute and helps us out. It really does. But that is going to be it, guys. Make sure you join the Discord, like Raycor said in the iTunes review. The Discord is lit. We have all sorts of discussions, from LeBron going to the Lakers.
We didn't talk about that. How do you feel about LeBron being probably instantly the second best Los Angeles Laker basketball player to ever wear that uniform?
Who is the first in your book?
I mean, Kobe is clearly better than LeBron.
Oh, well, I mean, obviously Shaq is better than both of them,
close.
so it's not.
So I was saying that's why I didn't
Kobe
even want
wasn't
to
even the
second.
Kobe wasn't even the
commit
best
second.
Laker on that team when they won the championships.
Well, maybe someday LeBron can catch those two in talent.
I mean, he's probably beating both of. Well, not. It doesn't matter. He's probably beating them in almost every category of everything. But Shaq is untouchable in my book.
He's still not as good as Kevin Durant, though. He's still got to learn to beat on the other side.
He is. Oh, no, actually, he didn't beat him because he wasn't on the team that 1 year. I'm just. I mean, you can try to throw. I'm just happy, man. I get to root for a good team this year. It's Thornrain who you have to console. I would feel bad.
This is part of me, like trolling you is part of me consoling Thornrain a little bit. Like it's my shout.
I would feel bad, but I had to root for the Cavs for so many years. I had to care about a garbage Midwest team. I don't want that. I don't wish that upon anyone, especially myself. No, Cavs. I always wanted to be a Lakers fan, and once they lost Shaq, I couldn't be. And also, I don't like Kobe that much, but. Man, LeBron in the purple and gold is going to be good. But that is going to be it, guys. Let us know what you think about LeBron going to the Lakers as well as Philly versus not Houston. Sorry.
Let Blevins know what you think about LeBron going to the Lakers.
Yeah,
we'll talk. You can talk to me at football season.
Yeah. All the basketball stuff comes to me. All the football goes to Death, and all the Magic the Gathering stuff can go to both of us. But that is going to be it, guys, for Death Blow. I am the Blevins, and remember, it's high noon.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. Threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now, God's my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change the world one bullet at a time till I find mine.
I was going to make a joke about how the starting lineup for the greatest all-time Lakers doesn't include Kobe, and I was going to put Horace Grant as the last person, but I don't think he played for the Bulls, not the Lakers. He was the
KD greater than LeBron.
You mean KG, Kevin Garnett?
Both.
Vince Carter.